Welcome to Wine Soundtrack South Africa. Listen to the passion with which producers narrate their winery and their world. In 30 answers, discover their stories, personalities, and passions.
Hello, friends and listeners of Wine Soundtrack. This is Mylrea, and today I am chatting to Craig Barnard from Eagle's Nest Wines. Very warm welcome, Craig. Can you tell me a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. Grew up in Joburg, so I fell into the wine industry by accident on a gap year. So I've been did my first harvest back in 2004, and I've been traveling the world since then. Worked at quite a few places, and I finally found home here at Eagle's Nest as of January this year. Taking over the reins as the cellar master. Been a very exciting couple of 6 months. But yeah, prior to that, I've been based out in Stellenbosch for the last however many years. Worked at numerous wine estates. Basically short and sweet.
Tell me about Eagle's Nest. What's the history? Where is it located? A little bit of background.
So Eagle's Nest is located on Constantia Main Road, nestled in between the back end of Groot Constantia and Constantia Glen. Originally it was formed part of Groot Constantia back in the day, and then there's been numerous owners over the years, but since 1984 it's been owned by the Mylrea family. And it initially started out as a fruit farm and farming vegetables, and then a huge fire came through the property in the early 2000s and pretty much gutted the whole place. And then that's when the Mylrea family took the decision to replant and establish it as a wine producing farm, and came out with a bang, producing some really excellent Shirazes in the early 2000s. And it's a bit obscure in the sense that majority of the farms in Constantia specialize in white wines, and we've actually taken the focus, because of our unique terroir, to focus on red varieties.
It is pretty interesting. I remember back in the early 2000s when it was, if you wanted a Shiraz, you go to Eagle's Nest, and I particularly enjoy your Viognier as well. It's a lovely wine. Tell me, how many hectares are under vine at present?
So we're currently 12.4 hectares of vines planted on our property, and then we lease another 2, almost 3 hectares on our property next door where we get our Sauvignon Blanc from.
Okay, and the Sauvignon Blanc is new. You didn't always have a Sauvignon Blanc. Is that correct?
Yeah, so they did have a Sauvignon, but not a wine of origin Constantia Sauvignon. It was normally fruit that was brought in from Darling, Durbanville, and either further afield. And the property next door had always leased land to other estates in the area, and as of last year the land came available for us to utilize, and we took the opportunity to take it up. And so our agreement is that we farm the land, we manage the vineyards, we take the fruit, and then as part of like a sale agreement, if you will, we give the owner of the land some of the wine that's made from the year. And it's a really great piece of land, and the fact is that it's right next door to us. It's practically Eagle's Nest. We're allowed to get away with having it IPW certified under our name, and so as of last year, the first year that we've actually had a wine of origin Constantia Sauvignon Blanc.
Okay, yes, I stand corrected. There was something about the Sauvignon Blanc I do seem to remember. What is your annual production roughly sitting on?
So the last couple of years it's fluctuated, but on average the farm is producing between 100 and 130 tons, which equates to almost around about 100,000 bottles per year.
Okay, so it's fairly sizable, yeah. In terms of export markets, where would our listeners potentially be able to buy Eagle's Nest wines?
So we've got a few export markets. Majority is in Europe. We send quite a bit to Belgium, quite a bit to Estonia. We do have a little bit of a footpath in Germany as well as the UK, Denmark, a little bit in Poland here and there, but I think Belgium and Estonia are probably our biggest clients, and then there's a couple in the States and Asia as well, but Europe mostly.
And what would you say would be, or do you have a specific memory or moment that, wine became something of importance in your life?
Well, I actually fell into the industry by accident. growing up in Joburg, we're not exactly around the wine industry much, and the little bit of wine that I knew was that my parents loved to drink grasser, and they used to buy copious amounts of the stuff, and so it was a completely foreign concept for myself. And when I matriculated, I managed to get myself, through a friend of a friend of a friend, a job at a winery in Wellington in my gap year. And it was a big 5,000-ton winery, and I was fresh out of school, first job, and I was really thrown into the deep end with having to manage the crush pad. And when you've got trucks for days processing 200 tons a day, working long hours, I had a lot of fun. And I think it was just the ability to have a creative element, of a physical element, a business-like element, all sort of coming together, kind of really appealed to me in terms of what I was looking for in terms of a job. Because I think at that stage I'd applied to every university to study a multitude of things, and this kind of ticked all the boxes. So I think if it wasn't for the winemaker at that stage that I worked for giving me an opportunity and giving me a lot of responsibility at such an early age, I probably wouldn't be here now. So I think it was very just a fortuitous place to be.
It really was a baptism of fire, that's for sure, by the sound of it. So I think you're in an interesting position, having only recently joined the Eagle's Nest team. When you first got to the farm, walked through the cellar, experienced the vineyards, was there anything that really stood out for you as like, wow, I'm really looking forward to get my hands on this?
Well, I think there's been a really good track history with previous winemakers that have come through the farm, and just the quality of wines that have been produced. So I think it was a really nice opportunity for me to also now not reinvent the wheel, but put my own sort of stamp on things to maintain that quality. And it was exciting for me to see that the viticulturist who's put a lot of time and effort in raising the vineyards and managing them, and every winemaker says that wine is really made in the vineyards, we just kind of tweak it in the cellar. I think that really holds true. So I think it was a really exciting opportunity to kind of see what work had been done, and to really kind of take it on and maintain it, and possibly even maybe improve little bits here and there. But I mean, we're not going to take something that's already so amazing to another level that's inconceivable. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think it was a very exciting opportunity that was presented. Beautiful terroir, beautiful wines, and a really strong, well-known brand, and I think it's a real privilege to be part of that.
Yeah, it is. It's certainly nice walking into something that's already got some provenance, for sure. How much is your flagship wine, and what is it? What's in the bottle?
So the flagship for us is definitely our Shiraz. Retail price is around, I think it's $2.80 a bottle. I'm the production guy, not the numbers guy, but I think it's around in that era. And yeah, we specialize in Shiraz as our main flagship, followed by Merlot, which, like I said earlier, it's a bit strange that every other farm focuses on white, and here we are coming with Shiraz. But our terroir, everything that contributes to our wines at the end of the day are really sort of ideal for cool climate Shiraz production.
Mm-hmm. And you've worked in Wellington, you've spent a number of years in Stellenbosch, and now here in Constantia. How do these regions compare for you?
Hugely. I mean, right now, trying to get the wines to go through Mallow is quite a challenge. I think just everything being cooler, the more rain, more everything, it's been a unique challenge. Wellington at the best of times is 40 degrees in the shade, and there's no shade. But it's a different mindset. The place that I worked at in Wellington was big production, so focus was put more on quantity, not so much quality. And then I worked at numerous estates in Stellenbosch where quality was the name of the game, and so it was nice to work with a multitude of different varietals, under different winemakers who had different approaches to their style and everything, and it gave me an opportunity to kind of realize that I don't necessarily want to specialize in quantity. I really want to focus on quality. It's given me an opportunity to work with different varieties and different climates. So adjusting to Constantia in terms of winemaking hasn't necessarily been a challenge, but it has been a bit of a change in mindset that everything happens much slower and much later on the side because of it being cool climate. And you're faced with harvesting in the rain towards the end of harvest, and like now trying to get wines to go through Mallow. A little bit of a challenge, but if winemaking wasn't a challenge, no one would be doing it.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very valid point. It certainly keeps you on your toes, that's for sure. As a consumer, what tickles your taste buds? What do you enjoy drinking?
I find that my wife and I tend to drink a lot more white wines, purely because she prefers whites to reds. I'm slowly trying to convert her to that side. But yeah, we drink a bit of everything. At the moment, I think we're really enjoying the Viognier that we produce. I think it's a really beautiful wine, and obviously with this cold weather, the Shiraz always goes down well. But yeah, I mean, I'm a fan of most things. I like to try different wines. I like to know what my competition in the industry are doing, my peers and so on. But yeah, I think for the most part, we tend to hover around the white wine scene purely because it's sad to drink alone.
It is sad to drink alone, that's very true. In terms of food and wine, do you have a food and wine pairing recipe, or is it a kind of a free-for-all, work it out and play around? What is your philosophy?
I'm very much a person who believes that everybody's taste buds are different, so everybody's approach to wine is going to be unique. So I always try and use the example that when you're giving a tutor tasting to people, that the person to your left and to your right is going to taste, smell, and kind of enjoy the wine in a different capacity to what you will. So not to say that red wine should always be paired with roast beef and white wine should always be prepared with fish. I think you've got to really find what works for you. I mean, if pinotage and Rice Krispies work, go for it. But that said, I think there are definitely merits to heavier red wines are going to be better suited to heavier meats and so on. And your Rieslings, Gewürztraminers, Viogniers, stuff that have a bit more floralness, a bit more fragrance, a bit more spice, are always going to go well with curries and tagines. So one always has to keep those things in mind. But I don't think it's a hard and fast rule that one should follow. I think you may find you could surprise yourself with a very obscure food with a very obscure wine. I think sometimes weird combinations work.
Well, I mean, pinotage and Rice Krispies. I'm still pondering on that one. That's an interesting one. Tell me, many producers walk through their cellars and speak to the barrels, or walk through the vineyards and speak to the vines, or play music. Do you do any of that?
Maybe not to that extent. I have wondered what the use of putting some quartz crystals underneath my tanks would do in terms of bringing in a new aura, but I think that's a philosophy somebody's got to buy. And having worked at one of the producers that do play music, I think there is some benefit to having that sort of nuance, additional nuance to the way you make your wine. Not to say that it will make it any better or worse. I don't do any weird stuff, but if it works for you, go for it. I mean, who's to say otherwise? I mean, if you want to whisper sweet nothings into your barrels and, Mylrea goes through faster, maybe something I should try. It seems mine are busy doing whatever they're doing at the moment. So maybe I need to be a bit more open-minded with that sort of thing.
Yeah, maybe there's some crystals you can put under the tank for the Mylrea to happen. If you could share a bottle of wine with anyone, dead or alive, who would it be, and what would the wine be that you're sharing?
So there's definitely an emotional attachment to that question for myself. My parents passed away 7 and 8 years ago now, respectively. And it was right at the time when I took up my very first full-time winemaker's position. So up until that stage, I'd only been an assistant winemaker, or I'd been an intern traveling the world. And so my parents actually never got to taste any of the wines that I have produced since then. So I would definitely want to share something with my mom and my dad. And I would love to share something from Eagle's Nest. However, as I'm fresh off the boat, I haven't quite had the opportunity to make something astounding as of yet, because the harvest is only just finished. But I think it would have to be a wine from a previous job of mine where I was the winemaker that I won best white wine last year in a competition, and that's the wine that I would want to share with them.
Very cool. I've got goosebumps all over. So when you were a little boy, what did you want to be?
Oh my goodness. A little boy, I don't know, police officer, fireman, pilot, I don't know. Played with a lot of Lego, so then I wanted to be a construction worker. But I was adamant when I got to school that I hated maths, I hated science, I hated biology, and I did not want to do anything that was those three related after school. So I took all the wrong subjects in matric, and then fell into winemaking by accident, and everything is maths, science, and biology, and worst of all, in Afrikaans. So I had to learn that very quickly as well, coming from an English school. So I don't think there was any one specific thing I wanted to be. I wanted to be many things. Never the idea that I was going to be a winemaker, but the world works in very strange ways.
It certainly does. So when you're not in the cellar, busy doing what you do well, what takes up your free time?
I like to do a lot of cycling. I live in Somerset West, so I'm very blessed to have a lot of mountain biking trails out near Stellenbosch and over the hill by Port Kluwer and Oak Valley. So I like to do a lot of that, and then it's also spending time with my wife and my dog. We like going on hikes, and we do the odd bit of wine tasting when our schedules both allow it. We're both pretty busy people, but I would say cycling probably takes up the most time.
If you were to take your wife out to a very romantic dinner, what wine would you order for the table?
For her, because I'm taking her out on a romantic dinner, I would probably have to lean towards more of a Chenin Blanc. I'm still trying to convert her to Sauvignon. If I'm taking her out for dinner, it would have to be Chenin, but if she's taking me out for dinner, it would probably have to be a Shiraz.
Okay. Do you support any sports teams? Sports, anything? Individuals?
I am probably the most useless human being on the earth when it comes to sport. I've always been a person who excels in team sports where it's your individual participation that matters most. So if somebody is to kick a soccer ball to me, I'm absolutely useless, and I'm even worse trying to pass it on to somebody. Which is why I think at school I excelled in sports like swimming, where although you're part of a bigger team, it's your individual race that counts the most. So having said that, I would not necessarily schedule my weekend around a rugby game. If it's playing, I'll watch it, but I would not necessarily rush home to go and watch it. But I do like watching all those obscure things on TV when, like the Olympics and stuff are on. I mean, who doesn't love a good game of curling every now and then? So.
Oh, my goodness. Tell me, what would you say is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Probably, that's actually a really good question. I want to say something along the lines of don't have your expectations too high, because sometimes you may be disappointed. So, and I think that's something that I often get wrong, because I think I have high expectations for myself, and I put a lot of undue pressure on myself at times when it's completely unnecessary. But I am a very driven person, so I guess I'm my own worst enemy in that regard.
I know, we tend to do that to ourselves, us silly human beings. Okay, complete this sentence. A table without wine is like...
A table without wine is like being sober and vomiting. It just doesn't work.
That's a good one. Very good. What sort of wines do you think will be drunk in the year 2300?
Jeez, I think with the way climate change is going, everything's going to come out of the UK. I would like to believe that the wines that we're currently drinking are going to stand the test of time. I know climate change is a massive thing at the moment, so I wouldn't be surprised if really good wines are going to start coming out of really obscure places that, right now are not really featuring in terms of the world map of winemaking. I think there's probably going to be weird hybrid varietals that will come out that are better, hardy varietals that can withstand whatever climate change parameters are being thrown at us. But I would like to believe that stuff like Shiraz and all the go-tos like Shennons and all that will kind of still be around and still achieving those old vine statuses that are currently in our country. I mean, we've got a brilliant heritage in terms of what old vine fruits are out there and the wines that are coming from them. So I'd like to believe that stuff like that will still be around. And I think if, with the right training and the right people at the helm of the winemaking, there's no reason why we shouldn't be continuing to produce those same award-winning wines in the years to come.
Yeah, I think that's a very valid point. Okay, is there a winemaking region in the world that you would really like to explore, like at the top of your bucket list?
So when I was studying, I really wanted to go to Germany to do a Riesling harvest. I've always been kind of intrigued by the more weird and wacky varietals. The previous job I had, I used to make a Verdelho, which was really awesome. So I like all those weird bits, the Viogniers, the Rieslings, Gewürztraminer. So I've always wanted to go to Germany. And there was also a part of me that I really wanted to go up to Canada to do an ice wine harvest. I don't deal well with the cold, so maybe it's fortuitous that it hasn't really panned out. But if I could do a harvest, I would choose Germany or Canada. If I could immigrate, I would probably want to go somewhere like Australia, where Shiraz is the name of the game, and I would probably want to specialize somewhere like that.
Shiraz, it's all coming through. Okay, name 3 wines, any 3 wines from anywhere that you would take with you to a deserted island.
Probably, I would definitely take the Eagle's Nest Shiraz for sure. I think it's a really great representation of a cool climate Shiraz, and it's a wine that I do enjoy drinking, not because I work there. It's just a really, really good wine. The second wine I would take would probably be the Cavalli Philly Chenin Blanc. Really, really good wine coming out of Stellenbosch. Sure, and then I think the third one would probably have to be either a Chenin Blanc from the Morganson. I think that's a really good wine. But if we're looking further afield, outside of here, I would probably opt for something weird and wonderful like a Verdelho from Portugal or something like that. Just again, I like the weird and wacky varietals. The stuff that's interesting. I mean, if you've only got 3 wines to enjoy, rather make them weird, interesting, and good.
Yeah, it certainly will add to the experience. Some really lovely wines you mentioned there. Okay, we're almost done. Before we're done, we're going to play a little game. I am going to name 3 varieties, and you are going to pair each of them with a song or a music artist or a genre, something that musically you feel would best represent that variety. So, needless to say, we have to start with the Shiraz.
Sure, you've really caught me off the bat. For Shiraz, I would probably say, probably Metallica's Enter the Sandman, just because it's an iconic song and there are some real iconic Shirazes around. So, not to say that the song has any impact on the wine, but I think you've got to have a really good song to have with a really good wine.
You're right, it is an iconic song and it's got those slow parts and then it's the darkness and deep. I like that suggestion, definitely. Okay, just because you mentioned it and because you said it's something different, let's go with Verdelho.
Probably the Macarena, just because that's also, when you drink a Verdelho, it's weird, it's interesting, and so is the Macarena dance. It's bordering on that like funky chicken. You just want to get up and do a bit of a boogie. That's what it is. Verdelho is soulful. It's elegant. It's got a bit of a weirdness to it, and yeah, so does the Macarena.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm going to take a funny twist now. Rousson.
Sure. Rousson. I would probably go with something classical like the Beatles. Everybody knows the Beatles, but I would say not everybody knows their songs. Whereas with Rousson, I think it's also a case of, you're not too sure what you're tasting, but you like it. Same with the Beatles, not too sure what you're listening to, but you like it. I think it's that kind of weird sort of terroir territory that you're dealing with.
Yeah, I like your thinking with this pairing. It makes a lot of sense. Craig, thank you so much for joining me today. It was absolutely super chatting to you. But before we leave, please share with our listeners where they can find Eagle Nest. Tell us what they can expect if they were to visit the farm, and also just share on your social media and website presence.
So we probably don't have the biggest footprint in comparison to some of the farms in the area. I mean, definitely if you come to the farm, we've got a beautiful tasting room that offers great platters and a beautiful area where you can sit down, enjoy a glass of wine or a bottle of wine or a case of wine. But yeah, I mean, we're definitely in the local shops in the area. We do send wine up to Joburg and Durban, so we've got a relatively large footprint, mostly through restaurants. And yeah, I mean, coming to the farm, it's a beautiful farm to come and visit. We have just recently done up a Land Rover that we now do vineyard tours right up into the mountains. So it really is something to experience. I mean, you go really high up, and when we tell people like our Shiraz is planted 400 meters above sea level, you can really experience that and see how high it really is, and the view over False Bay and Table Mountain and the whole of Constantia in Cape Town. I mean, it really is something magnificent. Not being a tech-savvy guy myself, I know we're on Facebook. As for Twitter and all of that, I'm sure we do have handles. What they are, honestly, I can't tell you. But yeah, I mean, come to the farm, come visit us. Constantia, it's a beautiful place to be. You won't be disappointed.
Thank you so much for your time. It was an absolute pleasure chatting to you today.
Thanks for listening to a new episode of Wine Soundtrack South Africa. For details and updates, visit our website winesoundtrack.com.